see my notes here. Going back to the road program, something I'm always interested in because I travel roads on my development, like one of the drives there has been pretty bad shape, and I see it's not on the list, but you're talking about 3.11 miles of roads in the base bid and the alternative one bid. Can you explain the reason why you have base bid, alternative one, alternative two? But I would note that whatever your total is 3.61, and what that gives us is just maintaining the roads as they currently are. It's not getting us ahead of paving more roads, because then the roads in my neighborhood, for example, would still be in very bad shape. And I'm sure there are many other neighborhoods where the roads are in bad shape that are not included on this list. So every time you pave 3.6 miles, yeah, you're just staying where you are in terms of what the overall condition of the roads in Newtown. So can you explain, though, how this bidding process works?
Sure. So keep in mind that we did have the roads in Devonshire and Nob Hill on this year's road program. However, there was an issue with the contractor and the Newtown Sewer Authority, so we had to remove those roads from the paving schedule this year. So the strategy for next year's road program is to keep a relatively low base bid, which is what you see in that 1.87 miles of proposed roads, with the intent of bidding one alternate in Nob Hill and Devonshire. In the event that there's an issue again next year, we can just reject that set of bids, and then we can move on to paving more roads under that bid alternate two, over that $83,000. So so theoretically, say everything goes as planned, we do base bid for the 1.87 miles. We include the roads in Nob Hill and Devonshire, which is 1.24 miles. We still have an additional $83,000 to award other roads to increase that mileage closer to that 3.56.
This all assumes that the companies that make bids are within your estimates.
That's absolutely correct.
And I've heard that asphalt prices are continuing to rise, and that there's a supply chain problem. There's a problem with truck drivers and so on. So, you know, I hope this comes to be, because I think last year we only paid, what, 2 miles of road?
2.07 miles, and that essentially is because we had to work with the contractor because we didn't have those bids broken out as alternates. So we couldn't award, under the state bidding requirements, you cannot award additional work without rebidding the whole project. And by the time we were able to rebid that project, that's when the escalated costs had kicked in, and we would have ended up with less miles of road.
Well, so there's money left over, is what you're saying, from the budget. We didn't spend all that money, I guess.
So, correct. However, at the end of each budget cycle, all that money gets redistributed into the general fund. We only spent $164,000, I believe, off the top of my head.
So we don't have a road paving fund, per se?
No, we do not. However,
So that excess money, that money that we didn't spend last year, we couldn't have put into a fund for this year. That's what happens because of that. We put it into the general fund to spend on whatever.
Right, because it's general fund money, it all rolls back into one pot to be redistributed.
Why don't we have a specific fund for
that? That is one of the things that's entirely up to the board. If the board wishes to establish a tax.
We used to have that. We used to have a 1 mil tax.
That was to repay a loan.
Okay.
It wasn't a dedicated
So in other words, we could come up and say we would like a dedicated road repair fund, so that if that would happen again, we can repurpose money from last year into the fund and make up
Yes.
for it this year.
Under the second class township code, yes, you're allowed to do that.
And then you could have a fund balance at the end of the year that we carry.
That's correct.
I know you said that most of this increase in the budget has to do with personnel, and you went through this, and I would like to find out more about why we need a deputy chief, because I know that the chief had a pretty good salary increase last year, precisely because we were told he's taken over, looking after both the paid firefighters and the volunteers, and he deserved that. But now I guess he tells us, if the chief wants to talk about it, that he needs a deputy. Why does he need a deputy at this point?
So, Chief Forsyth is in charge of fire operations within the township for 24 hours a day, 365 days a year at this point. That is unsustainable. So what is proposed as part of the contribution to the NFA for them to develop a recruitment and retention program is essentially the last step before this township is going to need to go to 7-day coverage. If we move to 7-day coverage by paid firefighters, they're going to need supervision.
Well, we don't have that yet.
We don't have that yet. However, we don't know how far off that actually is.
Well, I'm just, hasn't changed. His duties haven't changed this year versus last year, or next year versus this year, as far as I can see. And you're not hiring any new paid firefighters. The $330,000 you're giving to the NFA, what's that going to be used for? Again, I mean, you're talking about, you mentioned that that's going to help somehow coverage on weekends. How does that work?
That is up to the NFA.
It's up to, so we're approving $330,000 without knowing exactly how the NFA is going to spend it.
You can ask for reports from the NFA of how they're going to
Can
spend
we
it.
ask for the NFA to tell us now how they intend to spend
I
that?
don't know if they're prepared to speak
Can
to
we
that
put
right
this
now.
in the, for future answer? I know you said that we can have questions answered in the minutes later.
Point of order that 330,000 is if my calculations are correct, it's a 170,000 increase over the amount we gave last year. We gave 160 last year, and now we're saying it would be basically a doubling of that. And my understanding is that it's for relief funds for paying firefighters to be available on evenings and weekends, or, correct me if I'm wrong. And that is not only a county-wide problem of getting enough volunteers, but it's a statewide problem, and I dare say a national problem.
I realize it's a problem. I'm just trying to get at the numbers here. Last year you cut it by $15,000. I wasn't very happy with that. It was $175,000. You cut it to $160,000.
We did.
Well, I voted. I didn't like that, and that's why I didn't vote for the contract that was proposed, because that was part of the new contract. Okay, I didn't vote for that. Just for the record. And I'm wondering, how do we pay volunteer firefighters? Is that possible? I mean, you said, it's up to them, but is it possible to pay volunteer firefighters to cover the weekends? I thought that was not permissible. Can we talk to the chief maybe on this?
Sure. Chief Forsyth, do you want to come up?
Good evening.
Good evening.
The extra money will be to provide the stipend program for the volunteers to cover at least 10 to 12 hours both days on the weekends. That's approximately $50,000. Also the increase is for the reduction in the last couple of years. The Fire Association needs the appropriate amount of money to operate. Currently, they pay for everything on both buildings. They pay for the apparatus, and they also pay for the fuel that we use on a daily basis. So I'm requesting that the Fire Association's money is increased because they're basically footing the bill.
So you mentioned the stipend. That's not like a salary or anything, but
No, sir. It's a stipend program. Currently, our firefighters, our volunteers get paid $5 per call, whether they're out 10 minutes or whether they're out 5 hours. They get $5.
But is that what we're proposing for the weekends?
No, we are proposing that we pay 2 volunteers to be available to respond immediately from the fire station. They would be actually in the building, and that would be around $200 per person per shift.
And is that something that we have to apply for, like a grant or something?
No.
Okay.
This is totally separate. The Fire Association maintains this stipend program, and it's taken care of by the Fire Association, and it's the township. I think it's the township's responsibility to help support this stipend program.
You're just proposing that for this year, or is it going to be every year? Next year, and then
I would say it's going to go on forever until there are no volunteers left. I mean, we're to the point now where we're scurrying. As Micah said, I'm here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If the pager goes off on a Sunday night, I go, and we don't know how many people are coming with us. So our projection is to start this stipend program and try to encourage the volunteers to come out and receive the stipend to respond to the calls and be in the building to respond to the calls.
But you still have to get them to volunteer to do this. It's not like when you hire somebody, you said be there.
You're absolutely correct.
And is that going to be a continuing problem? I thought that was the main problem, that people are just too busy on weekends or...
Well, that's part of the problem, but we're going to staff the building with 2 firefighters. They will respond immediately. Myself or the duty chief will respond with that crew, so there'll be a 3-man crew responding to the call. Okay. That's our projection to make sure we have coverage during the daytime hours on Saturday and Sunday.